a book about the Tea Party versus the status quo, and that is Dr. Ed Holliday. He's in studio with us today. He just happens to be lives in the same town that we live in here, Tupelo, Mississippi. Ed, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tim.
What do you do? What's your day job?
Well, I work in people's mouths. I'm a dentist.
I've never heard it put that way before. Working.
So it's good to be
mouths.
with you this morning
Yeah.
and take a break from working in the mouth.
I understand. One of the funniest commercials I've ever seen was, you've probably seen this too. Yeah, I don't think it hadn't been on in a while, but anyway, a guy, a lot of people, this, a lot of people get anxious about visiting the dentist.
Some of them really do.
They get, a lot of people, they get worked up and it bothers them. They think about it for a week before they go. And anyway, so this guy's in there. He's already nervous. Okay, he's sitting in the waiting area for the dentist to see him, and so he overhears. He's supposed to go in next. No, let's see. I think he's in the chair waiting on the dentist to come in, and he hears the dentist on the phone upset at somebody. So the dentist is upset and yelling at somebody on the telephone, and he's knowing he's the next patient, the dentist.
That's right.
That ain't right.
That's right.
To be in that situation right there. But anyway, Rock Splitting Politics is the name of your book, title of your book, Tea Party versus Status Quo. Did I describe the Tea Party correctly, at least in part, that one of the fundamental principles the Tea Party movement expressed was limited government?
Limited government. That says it, Tim. And of course, the Tea Party phrase has been used and beaten down. And I think one of the successful parts of the liberal, when the Tea Party was gaining momentum and made those big moves in the 2010 elections, Occupy Wall Street was put out. And I think that really, it was put out there to neutralize the Tea Party. And in a way it did.
The Occupy Wall Street crowd, they were almost far left anarchists.
Very much so. I remember going to one Tea Party rally in D.C. or a lot of Tea Party people there, and after the rally, not a piece of litter, not anything. Everybody put all the trash in the waste baskets. Nice crowd.
And the Tea Party people are salt of the earth people. I've been to the rallies, and these are just God-fearing Americans who care about their country, and they were mischaracterized by the media, liberal media, on purpose to try to denigrate them and try to marginalize their movement. But let's remember, and to a certain extent they've been affected, the liberal media, in attacking the Tea Party. But let's remember the unprecedented impact that this particular movement had in such a short period of time. Now, the rise of it, the frustration among Americans was, among many conservative Americans and people who promote limited government, was on the rise, I think, even in the latter part of the Bush administration.
Oh, yes, very much so.
Don't you think so?
Oh, yes.
And especially when President Bush promoted the, right before he left office.
TARP.
The TARP.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? Do you remember what that was short for? It was a...
Well, it's when we...
But anyway, I'm setting this up here because I want you to talk about the Tea Party versus the status quo. But if you remember, I remember seeing that press conference when President Bush came out. It was like 2 months before the election. It was September of whenever it was, 07?
08.
08. Whenever it was 08. And remember, he came out and he said he looked like he'd seen a ghost, President Bush, and he said, "We've got to borrow $800 billion, or our country's sunk."
Yeah,
that's basically what he was saying.
Yeah, that was
he was scared. I think he was literally frightened. President Bush was. His advisors had come in and told him why he didn't know this was coming ahead of time. He didn't appear to know, to me. But what I'm ready to say is, that was sort of the genesis of the Tea Party, right? Have I got it right?
You got it right. Nobody really knew what to do, and then and
then Obama came in and put big government on steroids.
Right. And after we borrowed that $800 billion, then he came in and borrowed another $800 billion for a stimulus, and then Rick Santelli, a reporter for CNBC, said we need to have another Tea Party, and that's really where the phrase Tea Party came from, and it's still going today.
Rock Splitting Politics. Why you got that title on your book there?
Rock splitting. It goes back Matthew 27:51 when Jesus died on the cross.
You're going to mix politics and the Bible here? No, we don't do that here.
Do you do that at AFR?
No, we don't. We don't agree with that, Ed.
But Matthew 27:51 when Jesus died on the cross, of course, it said the veil split from the top to the bottom. It said it earthquaked and rocks split. So that's where I was working on this book. And my pastor was had that in his sermon one day, and rock splitting, and that is really where I got the title, Rock Splitting Politics. And you can, people want to look it up on the internet or get the book. You can put that in a search engine because there's not any 3 words on earth. Rock Splitting Politics only goes to my book and my radio.
That smart
radio
marketing
show.
Right there.
Yeah,
It's really smart for a dentist.
Okay.
Marketing.
Yeah, well,
I'm not putting dentists down. I'm just saying they're not known for their marketing. Okay.
Well, we can be creative, but not marketing. Probably.
Dr. Ed Holliday with us. Just to put a reminder on what I was talking about a few moments ago about the unprecedented impact of the Tea Party movement. When the midterm elections were held 2 years ago, it was the largest turnover in the history of our country in terms of going from one party to the other. The Democrats lost and the Republicans gained 2 years ago in the House of Representatives. You may remember prior to that, Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House of Representatives. She lost the House, they lost the House, the Democrats, and John Boehner became Speaker of the House. So, and those people who came into office, those Republicans, were in fact, they were a Tea Party.
Very core conservatives. And one thing you mentioned, we look back, well, where's the Tea Party today? Just think where we would be if Nancy Pelosi was still Speaker of the House.
Oh, my word. Don't want to think about it.
You know, I mean, that's why the Tea Party movement still is having an effect. You look at Senator Rand Paul and Senator Marco Rubio. They would not have been won if it wasn't for the Tea Party.
Oh, you're exactly right. What do you mean, though, by Tea Party versus the status quo? Are you talking about the fight inside the Republican Party over what their principles are?
Well, the versus the status quo, it really means versus the establishment in Washington, D.C. If anybody heard Senator Rand Paul's response to the State of the Union address this week, he pretty much summed up the fact that it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans. It's everybody's wanting to take care of their own little part, and the spending keeps growing and growing and growing. And that's really, I think the Tea Party is trying to bring some common sense. And we've started, but we've got a long way to go. And everybody thinks the Tea Party's over. And it's something we can build on. And they may even take a new name. I don't know. But what I was saying is what's happened in 2010 to put people in place in different positions. And what my book's about is really just encouraging people to stay with this movement. It's a long journey. And even though the election in 2012 didn't go the way conservatives want, we got to look for opportunities and not give up, because, you know, the fate of our children and grandchildren in the United States of America depends on common sense solutions coming out of Washington.
Ed, the back of your book, Rock Splitting Politics, you've put some interesting questions here on the back just to draw the reader in. So let me pick one.
Okay.
What does ex-Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, have in common with Admiral Akbar from Star Wars?
Of course, other than their looks, okay? Everybody knows that. Okay.
You're on your own, Ed.
That's right. You're out there floating, brother.
I'm pushing it on the politic level. Maybe nobody will send that out to Nancy in California.
He was just joking, people. To save your
Happy
life.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, just joking.
Yeah, and I want
About
to
that part.
I want to apologize to the fans of Admiral Akbar also. Okay.
I knew that was coming.
But but you have to read the book. It does it talks about a trap that so it's in the book about that.
About a trap?
That Pelosi and Admiral Akbar both found themselves in a trap.
You know, there's a reason Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky gave the Tea Party response the other day to the State of the Union. Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, also a Tea Party guy and backed candidate who won the Senate race in Florida a couple of years back. he gave the, quote, Republican
Right.
response. Why do you think there's a difference? What's the difference there?
Well, again, we're looking at the establishment, and Marco Rubio is definitely up and coming. He's a leader. Now, the Republicans don't have a leader.
He could be the next Republican presidential candidate.
He very well could be. And then, and anybody watched it saw him get a big gulp of water. That makes me thirsty just talking about it.
Yeah.
But people will try to ridicule Marco Rubio, but he's a everyday common person and common sense solutions. And I believe Rand Paul was selected by the Tea Party to give a response because he went further than what Marco Rubio did as far as what we need to do. He gave out and said he'd be coming out with a 5-year plan to get the deficit down. And he talked more about what we could do, just the penny plan, where you just take 1 cent out of every dollar spent each year, and we could reduce this deficit. So just the fact that we're talking about it makes it very important.
Talking to Dr. Ed Holliday, Holliday. He's a dentist in Tupelo, Mississippi, also very active in politics and the Tea Party movement. He's written a book called Rock Splitting Politics, Tea Party versus the Status Quo. Here's kind of the way I look at it, fellas. We're talking to Ed Battagliano, who was on with me yesterday. You hear somebody like Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, talk. The Democrats, through their leader, President Obama, gave his talk, the State of the Union address. And it was more of the same. I mean, President Obama believes in massive government and taxation and spending and borrowing to infinity.
Yeah,
that's basically what he believes in. That's his philosophy. If you believe that he believes it will work, it's so-called Keynesian economics, then what he would say, President Obama would say, yes, I believe in more. He calls it investment. That's more tax and spending and borrowing, but it's going to pay off dividends in the end because it will get the economy growing and going again. That's what he will tell you, President Obama.
He told us that 4 years ago.
I know. I don't believe it. And I don't think many Americans believe it anymore, but that's his story, and he's sticking to it, okay? Now, the alternative view to that, the minority view, which I almost subscribe to if I don't, and that is he's trying to bankrupt the country on purpose. That's wild, crazy movie stuff. I know that's for people, but I'm about there to believe that. Now, that's kind of not that's. But anyway, that's President Obama's leader, Democratic Party. He gives his talk. Okay, then Marco Rubio gives a Republican response, and then Senator Rand Paul tells the truth.
That's the way I look at it.
That's the way I look at it. Is that the way you look at it?
I look at that, and also not only tells the truth, he gave solutions how to get out of it.
Yeah.
And
such as, do you remember one or two of them?
Well, I mentioned the penny plan. Just take a penny out of every dollar that the government spends each year. But the other things, talking about this trillions of dollars, he basically said you have to be a fool to think that we can keep spending $1 trillion every year we don't have and not run off a cliff. It just can't happen. And so, but he actually put out solutions, and nobody's brave enough to stand up with the guts. And that's what the Tea Party
pretty
much
does. Why is that, you think, Ed? Why you think that you don't have enough politicians in Washington that embrace Rand Paul's, I call it common sense realism? Well, you think that without naming names here necessarily, but do you think within the Republican Party itself there is a problem that exists that's going to have to be addressed?
Oh, yeah.
Having to do with they too believe in big government to a lesser extent?
You got it. You want a Democrat light, or do you want a core Republican that believes actually stands on principles? And that's what the Tea Parties really do, is holding some people's feet to the fire that never had that fire put on their feet before. To say one thing, get up in Washington and compromise and vote for another. And that's exactly what Senator Rand Paul said. He told the people, said, when I got to Washington, he only became a senator in 2010. But he said, when I